our finding was not that the evidence is uniformly poor and that there are uniformly gaps everywhere. I fully agree with you, and in particular, the Exhibit 4, where we that you referred to, where we went to look at the highest quality, the highest strength of evidence for each prescription digital therapeutic. And our question there was, is there at least one study that's randomized, that's blinded, that focuses on a clinical primary endpoint, that's multi-center again, because we know if you conduct a study in a single center, you're more likely to have positive findings than if you have it in multiple populations. And you're absolutely right. We did see, 90% of PDTs had at least one blinded study. 100% had at least one completed study focused on a clinical primary endpoint. But the issue is that, and we'll get to the, I think, demographics of the included study populations shortly, but the issue is oftentimes these were not packaged together. So it's important to conduct a randomized trial in multiple centers that has ideally at least double blinding, as well as the demographic factors that includes diverse patient populations. And we found that all of those didn't package together as often as we'd like to see, in order to be able to consider the evidence as reliable, as sturdy as possible, to have causal inference. That is, does the prescription digital therapeutic do what it is intended to? So I think there are lots of positives, as you said. I'd like to see these packaged together more often, so that we have at least one really rigorous, robust study. I think it's really on a case-by-case basis, where I'd really say we need to evaluate this prescription digital therapeutic and the body of evidence for this given indication. I think in general, I would have more confidence overall in prescription digital therapeutics if I'd seen a more rigorous evidence base supporting some of the PDTs. So I'm certainly not going to say I don't think that they work overall, but also can't say, definitively that I think the evidence is very clear. I think that we need to look individually, and I think, getting to just the questions of safety and effectiveness, or benefits and harms for patients, because that's why we're all here, is we want patients to have access to safe and effective therapies. Is there's also, if we don't know if something works with rigor, then, and we start to use it in clinical practice, let's say we start to prescribe it, well, that might be taking resources away from from either developing other therapeutics that might be beneficial, and they need not be prescription digital therapeutics, resources away from other things. We're asking patients to commit time to a prescription digital therapeutic, whereas maybe something else, I'm just throwing this out there, maybe cognitive behavioral therapy might, for example, for a given condition, be more effective. We have limited healthcare dollars. So, maybe our insurers, including Medicare, with some of the pending legislation in Congress, might be paying for prescription therapeutics. We're not quite sure if the benefits outweigh harms for Medicare beneficiaries, and those dollars, again, might be able to be better spent in a different setting. So I think that's what we're really trying to ask. Can we get to a rigorous evidence base that gives us confidence that if we see a positive result on a meaningful clinical endpoint, we can say, hey, we believe this, that this really works. For most, we probably would not have that confidence. I agree. I'll first acknowledge that I'm not a regulator, and so want to be careful about sort of, I think our regulators do great work, and take within the current pathways that we have, they're trying to study PDTs as rigorously as possible in evaluating their safety and effectiveness. But I do think it's likely that there will be benefits, because this is a unique subset and growing subset of medical devices currently regulated as devices. As we discussed earlier, I think that it would be helpful to have a central repository of prescription digital therapeutics. I think that understanding what evidence is needed to provide reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness would be in particular quite helpful. And if we did have that, then I think, again, the whole field would probably rise, because the field, including manufacturers of prescription digital therapeutics, would gain a better understanding of what evidence is needed. Our regulators would gain a better understanding of what evidence is needed. Our payers, clinicians, patients.